students are gone, but you are still here. And we know how you feel because you are done. But you have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow. Good afternoon, podcast listeners everywhere. Welcome to After the Bell, a Stunt Brothers production. A podcast that gets inside the life of a teacher and provides a wellness guide for being prepared to take on this most challenging of professions. I'm Martin Stuvel.
And I'm Roy Hunt. And we share your pain, having taught a combined 70 years. The guarantee of this podcast is to make you laugh, make you think, and give you at least one little nugget that you can use in the classroom. So get out your marking, organize your supplies, or just pour yourself a coffee.
I want something stronger.
And listen, engage, and interact with After the Bell, a podcast for you, the hard-working, dedicated teacher who wants free lesson plans, free advice, and a free meal.
Okay, Roy, but I'm not paying for anything more than McDonald's. Well, Mr. Hunt, here we are, episode number 2.
I can't believe that we're here at number 2. We finished number 1. I really hope there's a number 3.
I know, and 4 and 5 and 6. So here we go. I think it's good though. So what have you been up to?
Well, I've been doing some TOC work, teacher on call work, and I've been enjoying going to the classroom, and then at the end of the day, going home.
Ah, nice, right?
It's pretty nice
because that day usually goes on and on, right?
It
does. People don't. It's not 9 to 3. Never has been. Never will be. As a TOC, though, you kind of finally get a little glimpse of that 9 to 3 world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know rarely have I ever just walked away from school with a emptier mind.
Lovely.
But I have now.
Lovely. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good.
And you, what have you been doing?
Well, I'm always out in the garden, but we're turning away from the sun, and it's darker these days, and the rain is here, and it's not really too much growing on, but I'm sure there's a zucchini out there somewhere, right?
Yes,
You know me and my zucchinis,
I know.
right?
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. Okay.
But
right.
we're doing well. But it's funny when you talk about the 9 to 3, because having retired, I was cycling the other day and I went past a school in the middle of the day and I felt like I was skipping school. It was a funny feeling, right? Like,
yes.
Shouldn't I be in there doing my job?
Yep.
So it was funny feeling, but it was nice.
That's
and
good.
A lot of the time is just, getting this podcast ready and getting ideas and keeping our connections and staying vital, right?
That's right.
You have to do that. There's that sound again. That's the nugget sound, remember?
That is the nugget sound.
We weren't always sure whether to keep the nugget idea, right?
That's right.
But I think it makes a lot of sense. Do you agree?
Well, the idea of the nugget is, you can think of nugget as gold. You can think of something that's precious. It is an important thing that you keep and that you can use. It's a metaphor for accumulating ideas and then being able to bring them out when you need them. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But if you have a lot,
right,
it's like another analogy is a toolbox.
Yes,
It's finding the right tools that work for the time, finding the right nugget. And so today's nugget that we're going to talk about is making connections.
Yeah, and we were talking about this nugget for our second episode being making connections with students and how that really is the foundation of a successful class. And I know when you started teaching, you probably can think of some examples that you started to learn that, how important that was, right?
Yeah. I can remember that, in the community school that I was at in northern Quebec, I had the curriculum that I had to cover with my grade 4 students. It was more a combination grade 4 or 5 students. And it just was a really hard sell. But the school had a lot of outdoor equipment, and I'm a very outdoorsy person.
Yeah, it was your background,
and
right?
in my background, I love snowshoeing, those kinds of things. So I found some snowshoes, and we started snowshoeing in the morning. And using the snowshoes and using the outdoor environment, I tried to connect our curriculum, which was on body science, and we were snowshoeing, and then there are times when we're saying, well, what would a rabbit eat this time of year? And we were looking at bark, and then we found some areas where the bark was stripped off the trees, and like, that's what rabbits are eating because of all the snow. And
did your students they were quite an outdoor class? They had a lot of connections to the outdoors, and is that why you thought this would be something that they can connect to me as well, and we can as a group learn from each other?
Yeah, I believe that was the helpful connection that I had. Being a community school, the school was in the center of the community. All the houses were around us. If a student was having a tough day and you wanted to help them, they would just go home and you could watch them walk from the school.
It was that small
to their house. It was that small of a community. But it was the connection that I made was trying to connect with the outdoor environment and connect our curriculum to their surroundings.
Right.
And it helped me out in getting what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And helping them or providing them with opportunities to share what they knew.
I think that's vital. That's vital.
That's an important part.
Right. And it's the foundation, and curriculum is important and all those other things. I'm not going to in any way say it's not, but it's not the foundation. To me, the foundation of a successful class is building those connections with your students so they want to be there in your class. You could have the best program in the world, but if they come in and they don't connect to what you're doing and you as a person and then as a family that you try to create in that class, they're not going to learn a thing, right? Yeah.
So what are some things that you found that were successful for you in making connections with your students?
Yeah, I mean, my first few years were challenging. There was certainly socially economical challenges in that class and other issues going on that made it, sometimes, wow, I got 5 minutes teaching done today. What a good day, right? But I found they were really into creative ideas and drama, and I've always had a background that I've enjoyed that as well. And I got in this idea of started to make movies. We actually made class movies. And luckily I had a very supportive principal who would actually give me some ed leadership time to sometimes take a group of kids. And we actually filmed one scene at the Vancouver airport, right? And it was a spot.
You went to the airport.
We went to the airport, and I got some time and some TLC time. I don't think you came in that day.
No, I didn't come in that day.
But I took about 4 or 5 kids, and we drove off to the airport, and it was a spy film. I mean, this is pre 9/11, right? This is 1991, 92,
right?
And I'm in the Vancouver airport with some kid wearing a trench coat and looking unusual, right? Like a spy, sunglasses, right? And we're filming this, and no one stopped.
No one paid attention.
No security said, "What's going on here, sir?"
Wow.
Right? But it was just I found some kids just weren't connecting to the get out the textbook right now and do these questions, which is kind of what you come out of university, and it's kind of more old-fashioned style, right? And I think I learned there's so many creative ways to present that curriculum. And I had a principal who allowed me to do that. And we even did some scenes that it was a 1911 building, Longsdale Elementary, old building. Yeah.
I remember.
And we were up in the rafters shooting some of these scenes. And I know absolutely this would not be allowed today. But it was up in the attic, right? And it was just so powerful. And I have met those kids today. I mean, they're in their 40s now, right? And that's what they remember so clearly is those things we did. And it just, I think their lives maybe weren't always so stable outside of class, but those 5 hours in class were a family, and stability was there, right? And it made them want to be there. And
that's so important.
Yeah, it is so important. So that is why our nugget is building those connections, right?
That's right.
What's that sound? What's that sound? And I think last week we kind of talked about what that sound meant in terms of making connections, but we think it should be more that sound is the homework board.
The homework
right?
board. Yes, I like the homework board.
I'm not so fond of the homework that you were giving, right, Roy? And I said, but I know. You've explained it to me, and I think this could be homework that might be kind of fun, right?
I think so.
Because sometimes it'll just be the one thing, like last week, people had to come up with a metaphor for what teaching is, right? And a simile.
Right. That's right.
Sometimes we might go on a field trip.
I can't wait for a field trip.
And I love those homework days, right? If I look in the homework board, it says field trip, I'm all in.
I'm in,
right?
Yes.
And maybe we'll go off and visit someone and talk to a guest, a special guest. And we really want to get out there into the community and talk about people from a variety of areas, whether they're a parent, a teacher, a student, a politician, a superintendent, a union president, we will try to get them connected, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great idea. But for today's homework on the homework board, we're going to ask our listeners to share with us one thing that they do to make connections with their student.
Right. Maybe they do that 2:00 disco dance in their class, right? They recognize when someone comes in and maybe they're not having such a good day, and they're able to see that.
To see that.
Yeah, and I think it's important because we often, hear people tell us what we should do, but we also should celebrate the things that we do. And I know teachers are out there making connections every day, and we would love to hear about those.
And I would love to hear about that. And then, again, have our listeners put it on the
Stuntbrothers.ca, right?
Stuntbrothers.ca.
Google stuntbrothers.ca and you will find our website.
And you'll find our website and put it in there. It's going to uplift a lot of people. I know for sure, it'll warm my heart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. No, that's fantastic.
That's good.
Oh, there's that sound again. That's quite the sound, but we know what that means.
You know what that is? That means it's detention hall.
That's right. So
I know last week I shared that I spent some time in the hall.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be about me today.
Okay.
Right?
Well, as we said, sometimes this could be a person. Sometimes it could just be an idea, right? And I think this week's detention hall is putting in the idea of something into the detention hall.
That's right. And then the idea of the past practices of embarrassing students to get them to conform.
Right. We probably all in our youth had this experience, right? Whether it was having to write lines or sit in the corner, have chalk thrown at us, right? There were some archaic ways that it really, to control, was to embarrass.
Yes. And I think I had most of those happen to me. Gum on the nose. I guess I don't want to go too far back because then people will get an idea that
you are 105.
I am 105. But the idea to embarrass students, to get them to conform, I'm so glad we're past that.
We are, and it's so important because when you do that, you lose them. You will never get those kids again, right?
That's right.
It's like if, for example, you see a student in your class who's not paying attention, if you call on them right away, because I remember doing that early on in my career. I would see that student not paying attention. I go, "Hey, Johnny, what's the answer?" I knew he didn't know the answer.
Right.
He was embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
I lost him. But if I said, "Hey, Johnny, I'm going to ask you the next question, so be ready."
That's right.
That right away gives him connection to the class, but doesn't embarrass him because he knows I'm going to ask him, and hopefully he'll be ready, right? But it's validating who he is as a person, not trying to get my class to run smoothly out of fear and embarrassment.
That's right. And again, it all comes down to making those connections so you don't resort to that. And I believe that was maybe the problem of long ago. That it wasn't the idea of making connections with the students. It was more the idea of making your students conform.
It was about conformity, right? So you could have a little piece, right? Not really about what they were as a person. And it's that using that word punishment versus discipline. Because of course, discipline comes from disciple, which is to learn and to teach, right?
I didn't know that.
That's the root word of there, right?
Wow.
Exactly. So discipline is a much more positive thing. Punishment is just, I'm going to get you.
I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
So in the detention hall today, we are going to put the past practices of embarrassing students to conform. That's the rearview mirror.
That's when we look into the past as a teaching profession and see where we came from and how things have changed since then.
Yes.
And also celebrate past things we've done.
That's right. So I think this is a good time for us to go look in our past to see a teacher who's made an impact on us.
Oh, that's great, because the theme of this episode has been making connections with students. So why don't we talk about that?
I think that's a great idea. Good. So Martin, could you tell us about a teacher who's had an influence on your life from the past?
Christine Miller.
Miller.
It didn't take me over a second to come up with that. Instantly, I could tell you, Christine Miller. She was my grade 4 and 5 teacher in North Vancouver, and I'm still friends with her to this day.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And we've reconnected lately because she actually runs the bear safety program in the North Shore. And it was a chance to see that she ran that program, that I was able to hey, you're my former teacher, but she was a breath of fresh air in 1977 about. That's always sounds so long ago now, when I was in grade 4 and grade 5 and had this young teacher. She was probably 22 years old, and she knew about making connections with students, whether it was Critcher's creative writing or putting on Charlie Brown's Christmas, where I got to play Snoopy.
Oh, I would love to see a clip of that.
Yeah, I got a big paper mache Snoopy head that I walked around in. And the special days she had, she understood that the foundation of a good class was making sure you understood where those kids came from. And she had a heart that really connected to everyone.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah, well, how about you?
Well, I'm going to go back to my high school days.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I joined the wrestling team. And my coach was Mr. Oswald. He was my PE teacher and our wrestling coach. And as I wrestled and made more connections and learned better wrestling techniques, he saw something in me that I didn't think was there. And he saw that I had leadership skills. I ended up being captain of the wrestling team, and just those little things that he did to help me feel that I had skills that I didn't think existed.
And yeah, your confidence.
It built up my confidence.
Right? Yeah.
And so for some reason, he is a person who I could say, just because being on the wrestling team and being captain, that's all I needed to feel that I was capable of doing something.
As a teenager, you need those validations.
That's right.
And to get it from someone like him. Now, did you ever get a chance to meet him again?
So what I did was after I graduated from Teachers College, I went back to my high school, and I went to Parkside Collegiate in St. Thomas, Ontario, where I went to high school. And I went to see him, and he was still there. And I told him about the influence that he had on my life.
Wow.
And that I was a teacher.
Yeah.
And it was the most difficult thing I had done, to look him in the eye and just to say, but I needed to say that. And
but you still feel like almost you're a teenager again, right?
Yes.
In that moment. Yeah.
And I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. I've enjoyed being able to tell Christine Miller those things, about the influence she had on me. It's just a wonderful way to come full circle with that. And then when they discover you've become a teacher, their face lights up, right? Yeah.
But I also think that as a teacher, that we're in an area where we influence students. We try to. And when a student takes the time to come back and tell you what an influence you've had on your life, I don't care at what point you are in your career as a teacher, that's a golden moment. And it has always filled my heart when a student's come back to see me. And there's been a lot of students.
Yeah, it's a chest of golden nuggets, right?
It's
just wow,
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So
that is why today's episode is really focused on making connections. It really is the heart and soul and the foundation of success. And I've heard that you, as a adult in life, to be a successful adult, you need to make connections with adults other than just your parents. It takes up to 5 other adults, and that's why teachers play that role. You're absolutely right. Oh, and there's the bell. That means it's the end of episode number 2. So this has been another blast. I've enjoyed it very much, Mr. Hunt.
Yes.
And I look forward to
our next episode.
And just remember, our website is stuntbrothers.ca. That's our website that you can connect with us, stuntbrothers.ca.
That just rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
It really does.
It does.
It really does.
It does.